Right now, I mean, literally as we speak, there is a massive liquefied natural gas carrier just idling in the Gulf of Oman.
Yeah, just sitting there.
Exactly, just sitting there with the captain, agonizing over the risk of navigating this heavily militarized choke point. And then half a world away, you've got a utility manager in Texas watching the state's power grid absolutely strain under this historic, unrelenting heat dome.
While a brand new AI data center tries to pull down the equivalent electricity of like a medium-sized city.
Right. It's wild. We are looking at a day defined by this brutal, basically unavoidable collision between our infinite digital ambitions and our very fragile, very finite physical reality. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive into the morning news briefing for Tuesday, July 14th, 2026.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
And yeah, the sources today really paint a picture of a global economy hitting a hard physical limit. We are analyzing a landscape where, a geopolitical bottleneck is heavily restricting global energy.
Which is a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, macroeconomic markets are struggling to price in that real-time shock against lagging data. The tech sector is finally realizing they cannot simply code their way out of a physical power shortage. And we have an extreme climate event testing the absolute limits of human endurance.
It's a lot for you, the listener, to take in, which is why our shared goal today is to extract the vital nuggets of insight so you can walk away with a really clear understanding of the big picture.
Unpacking the actual mechanisms driving these headlines. That's what we're doing.
So let's start with the most immediate physical constraint, which is currently unfolding in a very narrow strip of water. As of today, the United States has begun enforcing a maritime blockade on Iranian ports, oil terminals, and coastal areas.
And this is a massive development.
It is. But really quick, before we dig into the mechanics of what this means for global markets, let's establish the parameters of our discussion right up front. We are dealing with highly charged political and military actions today. So we are strictly reporting the facts as outlined in the sources. We take absolutely no sides in the U.S.-Iran conflict, nor are we, making ethical judgments on foreign policy here. Our focus today is purely on the structural and economic fallout of these military actions on global supply chains.
Right, keeping it entirely focused on the data. And looking at the catalyst for this blockade, the sources indicate that Iranian missiles reportedly struck 2 tankers associated with the United Arab Emirates.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you combine that with ongoing Houthi attacks on Saudi Arabia, plus renewed U.S. strikes inside Iran, the retaliation risks have just escalated to a point where maritime traffic is fundamentally altering its behavior.
I mean, they have to, right?
Exactly. Now, the blockade does exclude neutral vessels going elsewhere, but the surrounding conflict makes the route exceptionally hazardous regardless of your final destination.
Okay, let's unpack this because I think we need a visual.
Yep.
The Strait of Hormuz is essentially the main cardiovascular artery of the global economy.
That is a great way to look at it.
Right. And when that artery constricts, the whole body panics. It normally handles 1/5 of all global oil and LNG shipments. But today's sources are noting that traffic is currently sitting at a 2-month low.
Which is immediately reflected in the pricing.
Exactly. Brent crude has pushed over $86 a barrel, and U.S. crude is over $80, which hits a 4-week high. We know restricted supply drives up the commodity cost, but the friction in global trade goes way beyond just the price of the oil itself, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. The underlying commodity price is honestly just the first variable in a much larger equation.
Yeah.
The real mechanism driving up costs across the global economy is it's a maritime insurance market.
Ah, insurance. Always the invisible hand.
Literally. When missiles hit tankers in a critical transit corridor, underwriters just immediately reclassify the region. So vessels operating in or even near the Persian Gulf are getting hit with massive war risk premiums.
Like, how massive are we talking?
We are talking about insurance costs that can jump by hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single voyage overnight.
Wait, really? Hundreds of thousands overnight?
Yeah. Which means the shipping companies have this brutal calculation to make. Do they pay the exorbitant insurance premium and risk the vessel and crew, or do they reroute?
And rerouting a massive cargo vessel isn't like taking a detour on the highway, just taking the next exit.
No, not at all. It requires adding weeks to the transit time, burning vastly more maritime fuel, which is also suddenly more expensive, by the way, and paying crews for all that extra time at sea.
Right. The costs just stack up.
They do. Furthermore, you have to factor in the added security costs for the vessels that actually do decide to brave the strait. You've got private security contractors, specialized routing logistics. It just all compounds.
So a conflict on the other side of the world bleeds directly into aviation fuel, making commercial flights more expensive. It hits container shipping, meaning the component parts for manufacturing jump in price simply because of the transit cost.
Exactly.
And ultimately, that renewed pressure lands directly on basic household budgets worldwide. When energy and freight costs spike, the fundamental baseline of consumer pricing just shifts upward.
Which creates an incredibly complex environment for central banks and global markets, which actually brings us right to the economic data dropping today.
Oh, right, the inflation report.
Yep, the highly anticipated June consumer inflation report. The consensus among economists right now is that this report will show annual inflation dropping from 4.2% down to approximately 3.8%.
So what does this all mean? If the report shows inflation cooling to 3.8%, but we just established that oil is currently surging due to a live military blockade, isn't this report basically a mirage?
What's fascinating here is the absolute dilemma facing the Federal Reserve. The data they are getting today is entirely backward-looking.
Right, because it's for June.
Exactly. It measures June, totally missing the real-time energy shock happening right now in July. So a softer June reading of 3.8% might offer some brief psychological relief to the markets, but the central bank has to balance that historical data against a rapidly developing present-day crisis.
I mean, it's like steering a massive cargo ship. The inflation report tells a captain what the ocean currents were doing 10 miles ago, which is helpful to know the drift of the ship, I guess. But they can physically see a massive storm on the horizon right now.
Yeah, that is a highly accurate way to visualize the policy lag. They can't just set the autopilot based on the trailing data.
They really can't.
If energy prices establish a new, higher baseline because of restricted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, that external shock could easily bleed into the broader economy and essentially delay any planned interest rate reductions. The Fed might be forced to hold rates higher for longer just to combat the secondary effects of this oil spike.
And we're seeing that exact anxiety pricing into global markets today. Investors aren't really celebrating the expected inflation drop. They are acting with extreme caution.
Very cautious. European markets are declining, specifically led downward by travel and energy-sensitive sectors.
Which directly tracks with everything we just discussed about aviation fuel and transit costs.
Completely. Meanwhile, Treasury yields are remaining elevated, which tells us that bond investors are reconsidering the long-term interest rate outlook. If they believe the energy shock will keep inflation sticky, they demand higher yields to lock up their money.
Yeah, that makes sense. And amidst all this traditional market maneuvering, we also see Bitcoin trading above $62,000 this morning.
Which is super interesting.
It is. Bitcoin at $62,000 in a cautious market implies it's acting almost as a dual-purpose asset. Investors seem to be using it as this defensive liquidity position outside the traditional banking sector, while simultaneously bracing for renewed fiat inflation driven by energy costs.
It highlights a broader market psychology, really.
Yeah.
Capital is desperately searching for shelter from physical constraints. But that search for a digital haven actually brings us to the most profound realization in today's sources.
Yeah, let's pivot to the tech sector.
Right, because this sector, which has historically operated as if it were totally immune to physical borders and constraints, is suddenly slamming into a brick wall made of copper wire and electrical transformers.
The artificial intelligence boom is suddenly waking up to the fact that infinite digital scaling requires massive, finite physical electricity.
Yes. The scale of this boom is almost difficult to comprehend without looking at the raw numbers provided in today's briefing.
Let's hear them.
Well, Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company TSMC is expected to report a fifth consecutive quarter of record profit. Analysts are projecting a year-over-year profit increase of nearly 60%.
Wow. 60%.
For a hardware manufacturer of TSMC's size, a 60% profit increase is astronomical. It reflects a total retooling of global computing architecture.
Yeah.
And they are not alone.
Right, the Intel news.
Yeah, Intel is dropping $5.7 billion on an AI and high-performance computing manufacturing upgrade in Ireland. SoftBank is out here projecting that global AI development could eventually require trillions of dollars in annual investment.
Trillions with a T. But here's where it gets really interesting. That trillion-dollar projection illustrates the ambition for data centers and advanced chips, sure, but it also highlights the absolute physical limits confronting the industry.
Exactly. This is where the narrative shifts from unbridled hype to a highly disciplined focus on cost and infrastructure. We're seeing the concept of energy as the new compute completely take over.
It's like a developer building this sprawling futuristic metropolis overnight, only to realize they entirely forgot to run power lines out to the city.
That's exactly what's happening. The industry is transitioning from an era of theoretical capability to an era of physical infrastructure. I mean, think about it like this. A traditional cloud server rack might draw 5 to 10 kilowatts of power, right?
Okay.
An AI server rack packed with high-density GPUs training large language models can easily draw 50 to 100 kilowatts.
Holy cow, 10 times the power.
The physical density of the power required is entirely unprecedented for the existing grid architecture.
And the governments and local utilities are rapidly losing patience with this surprise demand. The briefing notes that the White House is actively developing protections specifically intended to keep AI data center grid expansion costs from just being casually passed on to everyday household electricity bills.
And the mechanics of that policy are really crucial to understand. Historically, when a utility upgrades the grid like building new substations or high-voltage transmission lines, they socialize that cost across all ratepayers.
Right, everyone's bill just goes up a few cents to pay for the modernization.
Exactly. But the power demands of these AI data centers are so extreme that socializing the cost would cause massive, unacceptable spikes in residential utility bills. So the White House protections are essentially designed to ring-fence these facilities.
Meaning the tech companies are being forced to internalize the cost of their own power generation.
Right. Major AI companies are having to publicly pledge that they will fund their own grid upgrades. They have to pay for their own substations and, in some cases, literally negotiate directly with nuclear plants or build massive dedicated renewable farms just to turn the servers on.
It represents a total evolution in how we discuss artificial intelligence. I mean, a year ago, the debate was entirely about the software. Could the model act as a reliable coding assistant? Could we seamlessly integrate voice AI into our daily workflows? Now, the conversation has moved way beyond capability. It is a highly practical, totally physical engineering question. How much infrastructure can the world actually build, finance, and power without breaking the local grid?
Because having the most advanced AI model on Earth means absolutely nothing if the power grid collapses under the strain.
Which brings us to the ultimate physical stress test happening today. This desperate, world-altering need for power generation is colliding head-on with a massive extreme weather event that is pushing the electrical grid to its absolute breaking point and directly threatening human health.
We are tracking a severe heat dome currently parked right over the United States. In the Southwest deserts, temperatures are approaching or exceeding 110 degrees.
It's just brutal.
It is, and it's not geographically isolated. The heat is entrenched across the plains. The Southeast is dealing with dangerous heat index readings driven by high humidity, and the Northeast is seeing temperatures push well into the 90s.
And, you know, when we talk about extreme heat, it's so easy to just focus on those dramatic afternoon high temperatures. But the real danger, both to the human body and to the electrical grid, it really lies in the nighttime temperatures.
That is so true. High nighttime temperatures are particularly insidious. Biologically speaking, the human body basically relies on a nighttime drop in ambient temperature to recover from the thermal stress of the day.
Right, you need that cool down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When the environment doesn't cool off, core body temperatures remain elevated. For older adults, young children, outdoor workers, and honestly, anyone who lacks dependable air conditioning, this rapid accumulation of thermal stress turns life-threatening very quickly.
And that lack of a nighttime cool down is heavily exacerbated in cities due to thermal mass. All that concrete and asphalt absorbs the afternoon heat and just radiates it back out all night long.
That's like sleeping in an oven.
It really is. The medical advice today is very practical. Hydrate, reduce afternoon activity, but most importantly, communities are being asked to check on their isolated neighbors.
Which is so important.
It is. But if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Oh, the grid impact.
Yes. Let's look at how this thermal mass phenomenon impacts the power grid, especially when we layer on the AI power demands we were just talking about.
Right. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, the electrical grid operates on a daily load curve. Typically, demand peaks in the late afternoon and drops significantly at night as temperatures fall and people go to sleep.
Makes sense.
And utilities really rely on that nighttime trough to allow transformers to physically cool down and to, cycle generation plants. But when a heat dome prevents the nighttime cool down, residential air conditioners just run continuously.
Yeah.
The demand curve never drops.
And now, add the new reality of the AI economy to that. Those high-density AI data centers run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are adding a massive, permanent baseline of new power demand to the grid.
Furthermore, Those data centers require their own massive cooling systems just to prevent the GPUs from melting down.
Hmm.
So the electrical grid is essentially fighting a war on two fronts right now.
Wow, yeah.
On one side, you have the massive, continuous, unyielding draw of the new digital economy. On the other side, you have the desperate, life-saving cooling demands of human beings caught in a severe climate extreme. The grid has absolutely zero margin for error.
Yet, amidst all of this incredible tension, a geopolitical blockade, threatening energy supplies, inflation data complicating central bank policy, the AI sector devouring electricity, and this heat dome straining the grid, there is this profound cultural event taking place.
The World Cup.
The World Cup semifinals are happening right here in the U.S.
It is such a remarkable juxtaposition of global events.
Yeah.
Today, North Texas is the center of the football world as France plays Spain in Arlington.
Which is going to be an incredible match.
Oh, yeah. And tomorrow, Argentina faces England in Atlanta, with Argentina actively chasing history. I mean, they're looking to secure the first back-to-back World Cup titles since Brazil accomplished it back in 1958 and 1962.
It really highlights the enduring power of a shared human experience. We are relying on AI, quantum computing, and complex financial markets to try and solve our civilizational problems, but humanity still possesses this deep instinctual need to gather physically.
That's true.
Despite the severe weather, and despite the rising fuel prices making summer travel significantly harder, people still just want to come together to watch a soccer match.
And the sources do explicitly note that the heat remains a major operational concern for the tournament organizers, the players on the pitch, and obviously the spectators in the stands. It requires massive logistical coordination just to keep everyone safe.
But the games go on.
They go on. It grounds us,
Yeah.
really reminding us that no matter how sophisticated our digital technology becomes, we are still biological creatures.
Mhm.
We're affected by the weather, we're seeking community, and we're cheering for our teams.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring all these threads together for you, the listener. We've covered incredible ground exploring the realities of July 14th, 2026.
We really have.
We are navigating a world where a maritime choke point in the Strait of Hormuz is acting as a physical bottleneck on global trade, and it's driving up maritime insurance and basic household costs. We're watching financial markets and central banks grapple with how to weigh backward-looking inflation data against a live energy shock.
Right.
We unpacked how the voracious physical power appetite of the digital AI economy is forcing a total rethinking of grid infrastructure. And all of this is unfolding under a sweltering heat dome that threatens human health and electrical stability, even as we gather for the shared cultural moment of the World Cup.
It is a profound convergence, and honestly, it leads to a final thought worth mulling over long after this discussion ends today.
Let's hear it.
Well, for the last 30 years, the prevailing assumption has been that the greatest leaps in human progress would happen purely in software and code. We sort of just assumed the future was entirely digital.
You did, yeah.
But based on the friction we see in today's news, what if the most valuable and lucrative innovations of the next decade aren't digital at all?
Oh, interesting.
What if the real breakthroughs will have to be the physical engineering required to secure global shipping lanes, to cool our bodies in extreme urban heat islands, and simply to generate enough electricity to keep the AI servers running?
That is a fascinating way to look at it. The digital world may be infinite, but it still has to live in a physical house. And right now, that the supply lines to that house are constricted, the power bills are skyrocketing, and the air conditioning is fighting just to stay on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into today's sources. Keep a close eye on the physical mechanics driving the headlines, stay cool out there, and we'll catch you next time.